If you use the internet on a daily basis, and chances are you do, you probably don't put much thought into cybersecurity. You know, your network connections, the pages you visit, the files you download. You should be thinking about these all the time. Welcome to And Security for All. Your host is Kim Hakem. We're here to help you understand, in general terms, how and why your cybersecurity should be kept in check. Now, here is Kim Hakem.
And I am not Kim. My name is Steve Winterfeld, and I am substituting for Kim today. I'm the advisory CISO. I work with Akamai, and I've got a background as a CISO in DoD, commerce, finance, and across all of that, one of the things I always look for is actionable research, and that's what I want to bring you today. And so I'm working with Akamai. Akamai is a content delivery network. They sell security capabilities across edge protection and internal segmentation, and they offer cloud infrastructure. So on any given day, up to a third of the internet traffic is going through some kind of Akamai infrastructure. And so, with the industry and the geo insights they have, really they brought forward some research. And this one is from the Akamai State of the Internet report on fraud and abuse. And so we're going to share stuff today that kind of delves into that. I want to define a couple things. Fraud is using deception. So when we talk about fraud, we're trying to say, is it using deception? If not, it's typical cybercrime. And then abuse is using something that is out there publicly in an unauthorized way. Scraping patient information when it was just designed for single patient lookup, or having a service that you can buy stuff through and getting a bunch of stolen credit cards and charging a penny each to see if the credit cards are still good. And so those are often done with bots. And bots are a collection of systems. They could be, a digital camera. They could be my mom's laptop because she'll click on a lot of things. Just a lot of these CPUs out on the internet. They can be used as an attack mechanism. I think of bots as friends, frenemies, and enemies. You have friendly bots scraping your information if you're a travel service and sharing it with people. You have frenemies if back when I was at Nordstrom Bank working for Nordstrom, they might be scraping our prices to be competitive. And then you have enemy, which are malicious cyber criminals. And finally, we're going to talk about generative AI, and largely what we're going to talk about is external facing large language models. As a CISO, I have to protect my employees using, generative AI, internal services that use it, and then external services we offer to customers. And a lot of those tie into APIs. So when I talk about it today, most of it is to be external facing generative AI. But you don't just have me today. You have my partner in crime, Tricia. Tricia, please come on and introduce yourself.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on, Steve. It's always fun to chat with Steve, especially about research stuff. Yes, as Steve said, I'm Tricia Howard, aka Tricia Kicks SaaS online, and I work with Akamai Security Intelligence Group, which is who puts out the SOTI reports, the State of the Internet reports, which is what we're talking about today. We have hundreds of researchers across the globe, and they are in different factions of security research or technical research in some form or fashion. And they break stuff and find stuff before the baddies do, and we write about it. And it's really cool. I have the coolest job in the world, truly.
So, in the past, we've talked a lot about APIs, and it's this constant evolution of there's a new technology, there's a new capability. We start to use it for our companies. We start to invest value in it, be it proprietary information or customer information. And as soon as the criminals see that, they monetize it. And so they follow us. And now we're seeing that same thing with the generative AI. we're seeing, a lot of places where we're using it to be more effective, and criminals are coming in right behind us to take advantage of that. We scrapers is a classic example, where you're going in and you're harvesting our data in ways that we didn't intend it to be used. And we did that. We talked about that in the past with APIs, and an API is an application interface, and it's designed for rapid machine-to-machine integration. The apps on your phone are using APIs to interact with someone.
That's how they talk to each other.
Yeah, and so we're seeing, this generative AI, just like it could dynamically write code for you, it can dynamically make a new marketing plan. It can dynamically make and execute to some degree a hacking campaign. And we're also seeing this as fraud as a service. If you've heard of Fraud GPT or Worm GP, generative pre-trained transformer, these are just like Chat GPT. These are places you can do crime as a service.
They don't have the guardrails, which is what is really scary. And it makes them very attractive to attackers because it can make their job very easy and save them a lot of time, which, they function just like a business, and time is money. So, yeah.
So we've seen in the last year through this report, bot traffic has risen by 300%. So the cyber criminals are now focusing on this as an avenue of attack.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more detail on percentage of new accounts and total traffic and all that within the report. But bottom line is, if you've got some AI capability, anything from a forward chat agent to an interactive service you provide, the cyber criminals are coming. And so one of the things the report talks about is what's happening and how you can defend against that.
Yes, I think it's an interesting. I mean, of course, I'm biased. I love all of our reports, but I do think that this is a particularly interesting topic because, as you mentioned at the beginning, we have to define these things now, and ways that with generative AI and LLMs, we literally have to create new ways of thinking about what they can do, because we never even considered. We've been thinking about this from a human perspective, but now we have this huge new technology involved, and it's creating a lot of new cool things, but also a lot of new super not cool things, or ways for super not cool people to do things. Maybe some better ways to say
And I hate to say it, but I'm often impressed by the innovation I see in the cyber criminal environment.
I hate how cool some of it is sometimes.
And so, you had that old traditional credential stuffing where, again, if you go on to, I've been pwned. It shows you how many times my credentials have been compromised. If I reuse those, then credential stuffing is a problem.
Mhm.
And it's just becoming more and more automated. It's becoming, if there's phishing campaigns, again, generative AI makes it easier to make it intuitive, friendly, tailored towards me. And so they're really moving at scale now.
Yeah, it's scary. I remember back when I was in my sales days, I was reaching out to people, what we would now call social engineering, which is another thing that Steve and I could talk about for literally years. Now, the things that I was doing that I thought was super clever and making it personal and whatever, now bots can do this for hundreds of people, and this very hyper personalized thing. That is scary, because when we're talking about like looking out for security awareness, or trying to stay safe online, how are you supposed to defend against something that truly looks legitimate? And in fact, in some way, even technically, there is some tough about this in the report. It can even technically look legitimate, and it's not. So what? It's just, poor defenders are getting hit from all sides, man. It's rough.
So you talked about being in sales before. Talk to me about ad fraud.
Oh gosh. Okay. So, I mean, ad fraud has always been there, but it is supposed to get even larger. I think the report said it's going to exceed more than 50 billion, with a B, billion. So they are coin operated, are they not? A lot of attackers are coin operated. And what better way to do it than go where there's already a lot of money, and ads are a lot of money. Let me tell you something. Ads are a lot of money. It's very easy to hide in there. But what's particularly scary about it when we're talking about this, the AI aspect of it, is how defenders are already behind. Now I'm not only having to defend against malicious people, I'm now having to defend against bots, for malicious people creating bots. Then I have to now deal with good people getting hijacked with bad bots that are actually for a good, what? Like, it's all over the place. So it's very difficult to even determine what a bot is now, or what a good bot or a bad bot is, right? I mean, it's just, oh, there's so much money to be lost here.
Yeah, it is a constant battle. I mean, we've in the past, the SOTI reports have talked about credential stuffing and how to identify if it's a robot or a person. And it's just so much more dynamic now. The foot race of, they innovate, we counter,
Yep.
they innovate, we counter is just so fast right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's really so, and I think it goes back down to something that I was kind of hitting on really poorly in the previous point, which is the difference between like identity and intent. So it's really scary that we now can no longer have these like binary view of good or bad. We can't do that, because now it could actually be a legitimate person with a legitimate bot. So now it's not just, is it a bot or is it a human? Great. Now we're beyond that. So now it's like, is it a human, or is it a bot that's supposed to be a human, or is it a bot that's pretending to be another bot? Who even knows? So it's interesting how we are going to look, or how we are going to be defending against this in the future, because traditionally we've looked at it from an identity perspective. Are you Tricia? Okay, well now it might actually be an agent that is acting on behalf of me. So is this actually doing what Tricia would want to do? That is wild, and that's where we're headed. And frankly, it's a very, very good defensive solution. Understand, if you can determine intent of a bot. Cool.
And a lot of that depends on how long you've had that relationship. If again, going back to Nordstrom, if you've been a customer for Nordstrom for a while, it's easier to tell what's going on. If it's your first time to the site, much harder.
Yeah.
I will say now, again, as a nerd, I love some of the technical stuff in the report. How they're manipulating the robot text file,
Yes.
headless browsers, the evasion tactics of the data collection companies. Certainly don't want to go into this with this crowd, but it does talk about business impact, and then it also in the report talks about some of the technical details. So depending on which side you're looking on, I think that's interesting. We talked about ad fraud. I love the old traditional click fraud. Talk to me a little bit about the zero-click searches problem.
Oh, so this is kind of interesting. If apparently 60% of searches now do not end with a click at all. They just end with like the enter button, because why? Autocorrect. It knows what we want. That's a wild way for attackers to take advantage for malicious sites, for instance. So if they get good at SEO, search engine optimization, which is a very well-known and recognized legitimate practice that businesses use, if an attacker knows how to do that, they can go in here. Also, when you don't have a click, that's another user action, right? So if you're removing the if you can hijack a legitimate user action or move past it because an action does not occur also, it opens up a lot of opportunities for attackers to get in. I mean, they're getting creative. They have to get creative.
And I know that was one of your favorite facts. Now I'm going to share one of my favorite facts.
Yeah.
I think, I always look at these business impacts, because if it affects my revenue model, I really need to understand what's going on. And so one of the things that's happening is, if you're publishing content, if your model is about what you're saying, how you're saying, when you're saying it, your insights, we're seeing, more and more, like 63% are AI bot triggers,
Mm.
which means they're coming in and scraping it and presenting it somewhere else. So again, if I have a news site and it scrapes it and puts it out through the generative AI model, GPT model, then I'm not getting any revenue. They're not seeing the commercials on my site. I'm not showing the traffic of the number of viewers that came to my site. And that's really, you know, it's it's generating no value to me. It's radically changing the business model. So it's something I need to understand and work with my business partners as the security person going in and saying, hey, I don't want to talk about security at this board meeting. I want to talk about how revenues being impacted.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. It goes back to the attackers know what makes their victims money, and so they know how to squeeze that out of their attackers. I mean, that's why we have I know we're talking about something else, but ransomware, we're seeing quadruple extortion tactics now because they know they want to get paid and they know that people have plans to not pay them. So they're trying to work around it. That's exactly what you're talking about here. They function like a business and you need to look at it like a business. The publishing, if an attacker is going to go where it hurts, and where it always hurts for a business is money. Always, right? Always. Yeah, I was really interested in, I've been, if you've ever listened to me talk, you've probably heard this before, but one of the things that is truly astounding is how much lower the technical barrier to entry is as well. And the generative AI and LLMs have kind of made that even easier. We were already heading down that path. You mentioned like fraud as a service before. The as a service model it continues to work. It continues to work because you have the technical people who build their stuff and then they make it available and then somebody pays money and then now anybody can do it. That's super scary when we're talking about a corporate side or even a personal side, because now, I mean, they just have so much more. There are so many more things available to hurt you than there are to protect you because that technical barrier to entry is so low nowadays.
And I'll follow along with that. As we look at these, I would say right now, commerce has probably been the highest hit by all of this.
Yeah.
And their business model is just, similar to publishing. It's just almost set up to be vulnerable to this. And so we've seen, the highest amount of AI bot activity. It's reaching more than 25 billion bot requests in a 2-month observation period. So again, this is starting to happen at scale. And so we're seeing more and more of this. And now's the time to sit down and say, okay, how does this hit my risk profile? Where is this on my risk register? Are we being impacted? Can I see the analytics inside? Do I have the visibility across my platform to see where I'm being scraped and detect where my brand has been stolen?
Yeah, that's a good point too, because that's the other side of this is brand loyalty. When a breach happens, you talk about pretty much a few things. You talk about how much money it cost, how much money was taken, and how it happened. But I completely forgot where I was going there. Sorry. Take it back to you, Steve.
Yeah, and I think all those bot triggers, almost a lot of those are hitting inside the healthcare industry. What are we seeing there?
Yes. Well, so this is particularly sad because what is the one part of data that doesn't change? It's your health information. That does not change. You can get a new credit card, you can get a new debit card, but you cannot get new health records. So these records are worth way more money on like the black market. And it can, of course, you don't get much more personal information than your health. So that it leans a lot of money. So that's why it gives attackers a lot of money. It's very lucrative for them to go after healthcare. And so it makes sense. Scrapers are intended to get information and condense it down into one piece. That can be used for good. It can be used for bad. But it makes sense that they're going to be scraping for the potentially most lucrative option, which would be healthcare.
Yeah, and a lot of that is around insurance fraud and things of that
Yeah.
nature, but it is an active market.
Yeah.
You know, the report also talks about geographical or regional trends. North America is still, the highest at about 60% of the activity. We're seeing Asia Pacific at 20%, Europe, Middle East, and Africa at 17%, and Latin America at 3%. There is huge detail broken out in the report itself. So if you're in a region and you want to understand, what's going on in Europe with its unique geopolitical issues, what's going on in Latin America versus North America, that's all in the report. On the industry side, what are we seeing?
So commerce, I mean, as you said, commerce, when we're talking about bots, they're usually really affected because, I mean, if you take a site down, that's literally money that they're missing out on. So and it's easier to skim, which is where MageCart comes in. So MageCart is still around. It's not going anywhere. It and Mirai are just permanent fixtures in the cybersecurity world. And it's still around because it still works. And especially with like headless attacks and stuff, it becomes more difficult to determine that you're even being attacked. So like for instance, on e-commerce, there was a MageCart campaign that was, I think maybe last year, where they had created a fake form. Okay, so we all buy things online. We all know how to buy things online. We're all also very used to accidentally typing in an incorrect number. So if you get a second thing, you enter your information and you get a thing back and it says, oh, sorry, your card details were wrong. Can you try it again? We're not really, that doesn't seem weird to us, right? Because we're accustomed to that. Well, turns out you should be worried about that because it could be a MageCart overlay, which is a fake form that inputs all of the information, sends that back to the attacker. And then once they have that info, it kicks you back to the legitimate site so that you can re-enter the form so that to you, nothing has actually happened. That can happen to any person. That is no business like potential. So it's anytime we're talking about bots, commerce is there because money and MageCart. I mean, so that of course that extrapolate that out, we have financial services. So more than 80% of AI bots, as we have determined them, are training and search bots. So this is, again, we kind of talked about this before, but they're trying to get more information. This can be competitive intelligence. It could be, there are a lot of ways to make money if you have the correct data. And that's what's scary about AI bots is it makes it very easy to do these things at scale and get more information in an instant. It's so quick. Yeah, and we talked about healthcare, of course. It's the most and publishing.
And then, I do want to talk about those regulated industries. Healthcare, finance, so many of these are, I've got to, balance not only my revenue model, but am I compliant? Am I doing what's right and safe for my patients or my customers or my clients? And so, as we start to look at these AI systems, we're seeing across all the compliance a trend of they have to be safe, transparent, fair, and accountable.
Yep.
And they're taking those 4 words and they're basing it on the impact. So if it is me coming in and just doing some queries for my own edification, those words aren't as important as if I'm applying for a home loan,
right,
or if I'm interacting with my healthcare chatbot. And so, we really need to understand that, because if that's not designed in up front, you're not going to be able to do it with generative AI. I'm here in Colorado. Colorado is one of the first states to have a AI law. We've seen Europe come out with the AI Act. They're Asia Pacific, everywhere we're seeing more and more laws come out. This is a place where you need to work with your legal team and make sure somebody's tracking what's going on. Because if you have customers in other regions, you need to make sure you understand what the AI requirements are. And so we have some recommendations in the report on just a quick overview of how to do that program. That first is you need to coordinate between the legal team and cybersecurity team. And cybersecurity is actually a team sport. You can't win
Always.
it by yourself.
That's right.
It should be tiered. It should be based on the impacts. It should have a model for transparency. That's data lineage, maps, validation, testing reports. And you can find the guidance, because I'm a huge fan of cut and paste plagiarism. The European AI Act or the NIST, if you're here in the United States, National Institutes of Standards and Technology 800 series, give you the kind of policies and procedures you need. You need to have privacy preserving telemetry, so hashing, tokenization. You need continuous monitoring, cross-functional oversight. So if you really don't have a program, there's a quick cheat sheet in this report that's a nice starting place.
Yeah, that's great. I actually really loved our chief privacy officer did a special section in the report where he talks about it. And I love Jim. He has a nice voice about him too. He's very nice, but it's a really good section. It talks about the importance of all of this, because compliance can also be taken advantage of in a cybersecurity context too. So it's not just about understanding what is out there. It's also understanding that if you're not doing what needs to be done, that you hopefully know about, you could actually have not only a cybersecurity incident, but also a compliance incident. Yikes.
But and let's be realistic. If you don't have a lot of the things we just talked about, you can't do an investigation.
No.
You can't do a forensic investigation. You can't tell when you had data scraping if you don't have visibility built in. And so this is a place where I really worry about the skill, because I'll go to if you've ever heard of me give my skill example, it's always the worst case scenario I had. I had one of my engineers go over to the DevOps folks and tell them they had to add file integrity monitoring to their process. And they're like, well, we have scripts of code that are up in these containers. It's like, yeah, and you have to have file integrity. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So there's such a gap of skill and understanding. And I think we're running into that again here with generative AI, where we need to get our team to understand the environment and what we can do and how to do it, and build the requirements in early so we can get this visibility and the ability to conduct investigation and compliance auditing.
Oh, 100%. I think that the important part is living in reality, right? We don't necessarily we have to understand what the tools are, what they can do, what they can't do, because there's a lot of discussion about what a generative AI can do that may or may not be true, and how we can use it to help ourselves, but also thinking about the attacker, how they are using it too. It's a lot to think about. And when wow, AI has just changed the game in so many different ways, has it not? It's just, of course, everybody's talking about it. Because it's just completely changed the game.
It has, and again, it has, but it hasn't. It's the same muscle memory we have. It's a new technology. We learn the technology. We apply the guardrails we need. We work with our partners. And a lot of this, I have a couple frameworks I love. I love the MITRE ATT&CK framework for analyzing, methodology. And I love OWASP. And OWASP has actually put out a top 10 vulnerabilities for our coders on how to deal with large language models. And so just like it put out the list for the original set for, these are the problems with web page. And then they came up with a new top 10 because it's a different skill set, different techniques for APIs. And now they've come up with the third one, which already had a second revision within 2 years. It dropped DDoS, which you still need to think about, but it's more coder side, and these are such valuable tools. And one of the things the report does is across those OWASP tools, it also comes in and it says, these are the ones that apply to fraud. So if your fraud losses are too high, then you can go say, across these OWASP models, these are the kind of things we want to focus on to reduce fraud. And I thought that was an interesting approach to take traditional frameworks and really focus it in on a specific problem.
Yeah, I think that's again, like that's living in reality. You see what happens, you see what works, and what works for your organization may not work for another one. But that's why you have to be continuously testing stuff and continuously monitoring, like you were saying. It's not even just about staying compliant. That's really how you stay secure these days. It's assume breach and work proactively, and hopefully compliance is there to support that, right? Well, it just may be a little bit behind. I mean, like you said, it's moving so quickly, the legislation can't keep up.
Yeah, and most of us, as a CISO, I never try to be compliant. I want compliance to be a byproduct of my security program. And again, let's go back to Nordstrom. I had 5 different compliance frameworks I had to be, credit cards and privacy, and you just name your compliance framework. And so, you can't be compliant first. You have to have a great program and then map all your security controls to the different compliance frameworks.
Right. Because it might be completely irrelevant to you, right? I mean, it's not even just a side of not doing security. It might just be irrelevant. So it's a good idea to look at your program risk first and then go that way rather than compliance first, especially with these emerging technologies that are changing so fast. I mean, even since this report, the data was pulled for this report, things have changed significantly. So it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. In fact, one of the things that really stuck out to me, you're right. We kind of evolve. We have different sections of evolution, right? We have like the initial, oh my gosh, we have a new technology that's really cool. And then we have oh wait, shoot, this can do some real bad stuff. Let's pull that back a little bit. And then eventually we normalize. And so I believe we are getting there too. The report talks a lot about bots, bot management and bot detection, because as we've mentioned several times, classification is really important as we are learning here. But one of the things that it talks a lot about is the evolution of bots and how they have always moved quickly, but now it's moving even more quickly. And blocking them is it's not going to work. If you are blocking AI bots outright, it's probably not going to work, because as we mentioned before, this goes back to identity and intent. You can't just straight up block anything that seems automated. It might actually be functioning legitimately. And so you have to focus on these management and mitigation strategies like the ones you were talking about, Steve. Like, look at these frameworks and the stuff in the report, because that is going to be how you stay safe. It's not just blocking everything. We're beyond that now. We've evolved beyond the it's like the firewall. It used to be just north-south. Now we see east-west, right? So it's the same idea. We came in, now we make things more complicated, and we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the additional complications.
Well, and I mean, and our customers are evolving. Again, going back to Charles Schwab, we would say, oh, well, we want to block that, but then we would have customers say, well, no, I have a large language model that I want to interact with my information, with my wealth system inside of Charles Schwab. So you can't block large language models because I'm using it as a customer of your, and so it's that constant trying to understand, is that a friendly use? Is it a frenemy? Is it an enemy? Is it a bot that's just trying to train? Is it, and we really didn't cover this in detail, but there are some bots out there that are focused on training. There are bots out there that are focused on being an agent and doing a function for you. Yeah. There are bots that are focused on searching, and helping you draw in and correlate data. And so, the bots themselves have a number of different purposes. And so you can't really throw them all in a bucket and say, this is how we're going to handle it. End of story.
Nope. It's again, it's way more complicated than that now. We have to. I believe that this is going to really revolutionize how we look at identity management as a whole, because it can't just be IP address anymore. It can't just be MAC address. It can't even UEBA, user analytics, as we have seen them like today. Just because I log in at today, currently, if Tricia logs in here, where at my house, and then 2 minutes later logs in Beijing, probably one of them is not me. So that makes a lot of sense. However, if I'm behind a VPN and I have an agent that's doing something for me, it could actually be legitimate that in fact, there's 5 Tricias. She's in Beijing, she's in Vail. That'd be great, wouldn't it? And all over the place, and it might actually be legit. So how do you stop that? Like, this is not only a defense thing. We are really having to relook at how we approach cybersecurity fundamentally, in my mind, because of the changes here. Would you agree?
Yeah, and that goes to that education. We need to educate our staff.
Yes.
And we need to think about, how we're going to do mitigation here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it ultimately comes down to adopting a risk-based approach. I can't be binary anymore. I can say, okay, if Trish comes in from her normal IP address on her normal browser in a normal time frame for her to be working, go straight through. If Trish comes through, Beijing, then do I put it under more scrutiny? Do I require more validation? And so all that comes down to, how am I managing risk? And within this, it's ultimately about the revenue model. And I'm talking about fraud. When is fraud high enough, impacting on our revenue model, to add more friction? Does that make sense?
Yep, it sure does.
And then, we need to monitor, because if I don't have situational awareness, I don't know what I'll be out of business without knowing why.
That's right.
So how do I detect where there's malicious scraping going on? How do I detect where someone's abusing my brand? How do I detect where, someone's bypassing those natural security guardrails I put out there? And then how do I respond to that scraper activity? How do I block it? How much effort do I put into it? Is that activity just costing me so much bandwidth because it's so high activity that it's not even really fraud? It's just an expense I can't afford.
Yep.
That might be a reason to try to block them. And then we're in that dance because it's a more dynamic. So I block them geographic. I block them by this protocol. They adapt. They come in a different way, and it's that constant race.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's cat and mouse constantly, except for the fact that the mice are way outnumber the cats, right? I would say. Yeah. So talking about risk, also, it's worth mentioning when we're talking about mitigation and creating these strategies, that you have conversations with your vendors, who are your trusted security partners, because they are probably also using GPTs or other LLMs. And it's entirely possible that the things that you think are not being viewed are actually, like, your data is actually being used. So have conversations with your vendors. Don't be afraid to have those hard questions, or ask those hard questions about, how are you using this stuff internally? Because as a chief information security officer, how are you supposed to actually understand your risk if you don't know what other companies are doing with your stuff? And when we're talking about at such a scale of these LLMs, you really need to have those conversations with your vendors.
Well, and it does. It goes back to understanding what the security controls we want are, working with our vendor management partners to ensure that those security controls are being implemented by whatever vendors has critical data to us.
Right.
Any data that could cause us a financial impact. And so, as we look at this, again, the baseline I would say is, work with your technical crew, your coders, your vendors, and ask them, are they protected against the OWASP top 10? Again, Akamai offers a firewall, and that's why we're talking about it, because we see this kind of threat traffic. But, have an AI specific security control out there that's protecting against known malicious activity and gives you that visibility. Internally, I would also say, as a CISO, I need to have policies and procedures to make sure that my coders aren't putting code out on unprotected public large language models.
Yeah.
So do I need to have a private instance? And a private large language model also makes all my data more searchable. If they are using public models, then how they're using it, make sure they understand the risks they're taking. Even somebody in marketing or sales that is putting out information into a GPT model that is pre-released because they're developing, wording to make the announcement.
Yep.
There's some danger there.
Yes.
It's not huge, but if the model is training on that, then it's going to share that information potentially with somebody else making a query.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to think of a massive threat literally just from asking a question, like typing a question. And when we talk about like prompt engineering and stuff, it's actually really interesting how attackers are taking advantage of the chatbots with just using their own logic against them to get information that they should not have, that they do not have authority to do. So you definitely want to start having those policies and procedures internally in case, if you don't already. Hopefully you do.
And then again, I can't say this enough. Leverage known industry best practices. Leverage, standard security guidelines. Work with your vendors and ask them what are their best practices. What are their top most successful customers doing? Leverage those frameworks we talked about. NIST is a great framework. It is a lot to read through. Trust me, I'm not suggesting that, you take Saturday afternoon at the beach and read through the NIST 800, large language model implementation.
My kind of Saturday.
But it is worth going in there and scraping out, again, using that word for our benefit this time, scraping out that kind of framework detail that we need to use. So we have policies and written guidance. And again, I'm less worried about compliance some days than I am class action lawsuits. And so we just need to have things done in a way that we're protecting our company and doing the right thing by the customer.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Again, the game has been changed. So now we have to kind of sit back. We've been sitting back, we've been observing, and now we have data to report on, and we can start making decisions moving forward. Hopefully the data is actually something we can trust, because it's not just, bots that we think are humans or anything else. But it's going to be an interesting time moving forward, isn't it?
What's the Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
And then the last piece on mitigation is, so much of this ties to APIs. So I really think you need to integrate your API and your large language model strategies together. There's so much overlap. APIs are leveraging large language models, and it's just really tight there. So again, we're at time. I want to thank everybody for spending some time for us to review this report. I'm really proud of a lot of the state of the internet reports we put out. This is our fifth one this year. We have a bunch of them coming out next year. If you want to read the full report, just type in Akamai, AKMAI, and then SOTI, SOTI, and fraud, and it'll bring you right to the site to download it. Go to Akamai blogs. There's a lot of great blogs. Tom Emmons has done a couple really interesting ones on AI activity, generative AI activity and threat activity lately. And again, thanks for joining us, Trish.
Yeah, thank you. This was so fun. Bye.